Hello everybody, good evening. I'm Cosmic Claire and welcome to one of my nightly video blogs here on New Year's Eve at the end of 2012 with 2013 just a few hours away here on Greenwich Mean Time in England. Well, I'm sorry about the ongoing sound level issues that some people seem to have been having. It's all checking out okay at my end, but people keep saying that they can't hear the videos, so I have raised the levels again, and I'm hoping that that will solve the problem and that I won't have to raise them anymore, because if I do, I may end up with overloading at my end. However, we shall just have to see how that goes in the new year. One of the things somebody said in the feedback was something about what I talk about being preaching to the converted, which I kind of thought was not really what I'm aiming to do. I mean, obviously I'm very pleased if people who, agree or understand what I'm saying listen, and that's absolutely great. But I would kind of, the idea is to kind of move it sideways into a different population, hopefully by some kind of gentle process of osmosis. I mean, one of the things that's important for me is to be able to integrate the the good bits of mainstream reality with the parts that need to replace the bad bits. This morning I had the great pleasure of listening to the Red Ice podcast of Henrik Palmgren's interview with Rupert Sheldrake, who is a great hero of mine, because he has dared challenge certain scientific dogmas, and he's got a new book out called The Science Delusion, which didn't Richard Dawkins write a book called The God Delusion? I think it's really, really important at this stage that people like Rupert Sheldrake, and he's kind of the front runner in this thing for a very long time, need to get us away from mechanistic, reductionist, did I say that already? Materialist, reductionist, mechanist view of the existence of the universe and all that stuff. And he very, very clearly explained how before Descartes people used to believe in the existence of all kinds of angels and spirits and things like this, water sprites and nature devas and angels, and that everybody had a soul and all this kind of stuff. And while at some levels it was a limiting belief system, worldview, and also it was hijacked and perverted by those who wanted to make political capital out of it, such as the Roman Catholic Church. We won't get too heavily into that for the moment, but I think everybody knows that. And so in its own way, the scientific revolution of the 17th century onwards was kind of very good, but it kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater, unfortunately, as well. So it took off a completely different tack, and we now need to be able to reintegrate these. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think interest in medievalists such as C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien persists, because people want to rediscover something of that mythic world where everything is alive. And what Rupert Sheldrake does is he takes apart the scientific worldview, the mechanist reductionist view, as being a whole series of assumptions which are unproved, so that they've led us to go down this very narrow corridor of reality, which is all right within certain confines, but is ignoring a wide spectrum of reality beyond that. And what I was absolutely fascinated by when I was listening to him this morning was how he compared his proposed model of the structure of the universe, which incorporates consciousness, as being similar to structures in pantheons in Hinduism and Christianity. Christianity wouldn't call it a pantheon, they would call it a trinity. And in Hinduism, well, I better say what Sheldrakes' structure of the universe is. I love this. It makes perfect intuitive sense. That there's this whole question of what in physics they call the hard problem. What is consciousness and why does it exist? Materialist science of the Newtonian mode completely doesn't need consciousness, but then you start getting down to quantum levels, and quantum probability is affected by observer and all this kind of stuff, and there's apart from that, there's the simple problem of what is consciousness, and all these excuses about it's some kind of epiphenomenon or byproduct of material processes in the brain and stuff, but really nobody from that point of view has the faintest idea. It is something which to say that it's produced by the neural processes in the brain is a category error. It's like saying well, it's kind of philosophical synesthesia, isn't it? The model that Sheldrake thinks explains this is that the universe is made up of three aspects which are interlinking there, what you might call three dimensions of existence, none of which can exist without the other. So what he has is that consciousness is not this kind of epiphenomenal invention, goes to the machine, we don't want to talk about that. It is kind of the linchpin that holds the other two together. You have consciousness, which is awareness of possibility and choice, and then you have the field, like a magnetic field, a space field, within which the third part, energy, moves around within it. So, and just before I came onto this video, I thought I made a comparison, which had a comparison which came into my mind, which I think. Well, for me, it helps to elaborate this notion, and that is, I've often thought about how the avoidance, the reluctance to get into teleology and consciousness in modern reductionist science is a bit like going to a theatre and saying, oh yes, we understand how all the architecture of the building was made, we understand the way all the scenery on the stage was made, we can see the piles of scripts and books and transcripts that are there for the actors to perform, and we can see all the pulleys and everything which move the flats up and down and replace it, and the trapdoors and all that stuff, and to completely miss the point of what that is all there to support. And this is like and what it's there to support is, of course, the story, the drama, the idea, whatever it is, which is expressed through the play. And then the third one you have is the observer, because if there is no one observing it, then it's not really fulfilling its complete function. Because even when one is dreaming, one still has this feeling of observing, and even though that is probably largely being created by your own mind. This three-angled view of the nature of existence explains what is going on in a far, far deeper and more satisfactory way than material science can. Material science is the pulleys and the trapdoors and the scenery and the way they're pulled on and off stage and all that kind of stuff. But that is a completely one-dimensional view of it. It condenses everything into just one thing, which is this unconscious matter, which somehow, even though it's unconscious, it just has, it operates by fixed principles, or even though Sheldrake says those principles may indeed be able to evolve. I think it's very interesting that he made a comparison with Christian theology, which would make the three aspects that he said be like the three aspects of the Trinity, which is quite a fascinating thing. I had to think about that quite a lot to think what he meant. There's a lot of bad stuff that has been done to ancient mysteries, and it's a pity that some of these bad things that have been done to these ancient mysteries have put people off being able to look at what those actual ancient mysteries were about, or ancient wisdom, or whatever, and from different angles. And I think probably the correlations that we're talking about here in terms of what Sheldrake means is that consciousness would be God the Father or Brahman, the creator. So it's like the consciousness projects it all out. Then you would have the I'm not so hot on the Hindu pantheon, but I believe this is how it goes, and Sheldrake talked about in terms of Shiva and Shakti, which I don't understand quite so well. I kind of do. It's a bit like yin and yang, I suppose, isn't it? Or yang and yin, and so that in itself is like a kind of microcosm. But probably the equivalent to the field would be Vishnu, the preserver, the being that holds it all, which kind of hard to, well, I'm not absolutely certain about this in terms of the Christian Trinity, but I think that would probably be the Christ, the thing which in Sheldrake, he talks about the meaning, and so the field gives meaning because it gives context, and context, as we all know from the constructionists and deconstructivists and all these people, context is immensely important in understanding the way things are, because it's all about relation. And then the Shiva, the interestingly kind of known as the destroyer, but it's the kind of the living energy, which would be the spirit, the transforming thing, which I suppose probably Shiva is seen as destroying because he never lets anything rest. Rust never sleeps. Shiva is the restless intelligence, which always wants to be dancing, the dance of Shiva. And so you have these three interlocking aspects, three dimensions of existence, without which we cannot imagine the mind to exist. Our minds are like that. That is the existence that we experience. Our minds have this three triune aspect, which is that there's the consciousness, the I, which is, interestingly, some kind of cosmic pun, the I am, and there's another, I might as well put this in now, there's another cosmic pun that I like there, which of course is I am. You hear a lot about this in metaphysical circles, but you don't often hear mention of the fact that the Latin word I am, yam, is actually the word it means now, which is kind of interesting because that's what consciousness is. Consciousness is now. Eckhart Tolle goes on about this, the power of now. And of course yam is only a kind of an emphasis away from aum, which is the word which is purported to have been the impulse of creation, the moment of creation. Aum, yam, now, this is it. So that's just a little bit of interesting cosmic synchronicities and cosmic puns. But the I then perceives the energy going around in the field, either the actors playing the drama on the stage or the movie being played out on the screen. You have the information and the context. You have the drama and the frame that we choose to put on it. And I just, I've been into Sheldrakes' ideas previously. Obviously the more field stuff back in the 90s and early, I think he got into that into the 80s even. All this other stuff that he's been kind of developing in terms of consciousness fields over the last 15 or 20 years. And I think that the culmination of putting it in this terminology, this framework of consciousness, energy and field is just absolutely fantastic, and I think it's a marvellous breakthrough. This is, to me, this sums up the whole meaning, the whole essence of what we've been searching for in terms of I've been looking for, and I think a lot of people have for many years now, for a unifying way of looking at the world between science and spirituality or religion. And I think that he's boiled it down and he's done it, and this is we can now base our future decisions understanding that this is the way the universe is, and we can actually get on with making good decisions based on facts and the way things are, rather than delusions and mistakes, which is what I believe has been the materialist religious dichotomy split. We need to reintegrate it all and see ourselves as pivotal foci of existence. So there we are. That's a big one, isn't it, folks? Right, well, that's my message for the new year. You are a cosmic being, and your mind is a model of the universe. So isn't that wonderful thought for 2013? Isn't that a wonderful way to finish the momentous year of 2012? Your mind is a model of the universe. Okay, so just leaves me to say Happy New Year 2013, and in Lakesh. Thank you for watching. Need to get us away from mechanistic, reductionist, mechanist, did I say that already? Materialist, reductionist, mechanist view of the existence of the universe and all that stuff. And he very, very clearly explained how before Descartes people used to believe in the existence of all kinds of angels and spirits and things like this, water sprites and nature devas and angels, and that everybody had a soul and all this kind of stuff. And while at some levels it was a limiting belief. Hello everybody, good evening. I'm Cosmic Claire and welcome to one of my nightly video blogs here on New Year's Eve at the end of 2012 with 2013 just a few hours away here on Greenwich Mean Time in England. Well, I'm sorry about the ongoing sound level issues that some people seem to have been having. It's all checking out okay at my end, but people keep saying that they can't hear the videos, so I have raised the levels again, and I'm hoping that that will solve the problem and that I won't have to raise them anymore. Of Henrik Palmgren's interview with Rupert Sheldrake, who is a great hero of mine, because he has dared challenge certain scientific dogmas, and he's got a new book out called The Science Delusion, which didn't Richard Dawkins write a book called The God Delusion? I think it's really, really important at this stage that people like Rupert Sheldrake, and he's kind of the front runner in this thing for a very long time, because if I do, I may end up with overloading at my end. However, we shall just have to see how that goes in the new year. One of the things somebody said in the feedback was something about what I talk about being preaching to the converted, which I kind of thought was not really what I'm aiming to do. I mean, obviously I'm very pleased if people who agree or understand what I'm saying listen, and that's absolutely great. But I would kind of the idea is to kind of move it sideways into a different population, hopefully by some kind of gentle process of osmosis. I mean, one of the things that's important for me is to be able to integrate the the good bits of mainstream reality with the parts that need to replace the bad bits. This morning I had the great pleasure of listening to the Red Ice podcast,